Hi, everyone. This is Greg Kahn from the IoT Consortium. We're going to be kicking off today's webinar in about 3 to 5 minutes. Let everybody jump on the line here, and then we'll get started. And we'll get started in just 1 minute. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It's Greg Kahn from the IoT Consortium. We're going to get started with today's storytelling session on smart cities. This is part 4 of our 5-part smart cities storytelling session. And we're thrilled today to be discussing the sharing economy and emerging forms of urban mobility. We have 2 guests today that I'll introduce in a second, but just a little bit about the consortium for those of you who are not familiar with the organization. The IoTC is the leading business development association for 5 areas of the Internet of Things, and those are connected cities, vehicles, homes, wearables, and retail. 2 of our members are joining us today, and mobility is one of the hottest topics that we are being asked about at the consortium, and so we're thrilled to have a whole session today dedicated to it. If you're interested in learning more about the association, our next member meeting will be co-located at IoT World, May 13th in Santa Clara. So please reach out to us afterwards for more information. But without further ado, love to introduce our 2 guests today in the session, and then we will let them take you through their presentations. Quick housekeeping note, after each of the sessions, we are going to allow some questions and answers. So you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A or chat function if you'd like to ask your questions, and you can do it while the session is taking place, and then I will moderate the discussion. Today's guests are Andy Souders, the CEO of All Traffic Solutions, and Jeff Talin, the Vice President of Products Development at Avis Budget Group. Just a little setup for today. We all believe that future mobility will be connected, integrated, and on demand. And at the same time, the sharing economy is booming. And the way that we define the sharing economy broadly is as an economic model in which individuals can borrow, rent, or otherwise utilize assets owned by others. PwC projects that key sharing sectors, including ride sharing, have the potential to reach a global revenue of $335 billion by 2025. As new forms of urban mobility, such as autonomous cars, e-bikes, and scooters continue to emerge and garner high levels of corporate and venture investment, it's important that the whole industry understand the implications from the perspectives of urban planning, traffic management, public safety, and business enablement. This session today will seek to identify which business models are poised to continue accelerating in this space and how cities must and continue preparing. So first, I'd like to introduce Andy Souders from All Traffic Solutions, who is going to kick off the session today. Welcome, Andy. Andy, I think you're on mute.
Thanks, Greg. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Perfect. See, all that practice, and now we got it to work in real time. So thanks for that great intro. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen? I'm assuming yes. So as Greg mentioned, I'm Andy Souders.
And Andy, we can't see your screen yet. So you just want to make sure you get that. Cannot see your screen.
All right.
Now we can see your
screen.
How
about now? All right, there we go. So I appreciate that and apologize for the technical difficulties there. But thanks, Greg. As Greg mentioned, I'm Andy Souders, President and CEO of All Traffic Solutions. Just to start, I'm sure many of you have heard about my co-presenter's company, Avis Budget, but a lot of you might not have heard of All Traffic Solutions. So ATS started in 2003, primarily around the final assembly and manufacturing of standalone radar speed signs and variable message signs. So if you've ever seen a radar speed display that says speed limit 55, your speed 75, that might be one of ours. Oh, and you probably should slow down. And by the way, just for the record, so I don't get a bunch of questions after our session, we don't do anything with speed ticketing, so don't ask me to get you out of your ticket. As far as the variable message signs, maybe you've seen one of the signs that says zombie apocalypse ahead, those orange signs that are alongside the road or a little bit smaller than that. In that case, that's probably not one of ours because ours are locked down really tight. About 10 years ago, and along the lines of the IoT consortium, versus having to walk up to the speed display to download the data for reporting or pull the keyboard tray out of the variable message sign, we connected all of our stuff to the internet. So we've been an Internet of Things company for the past 10 years, and we have several patents around that technology. Since then, we've continued to be an innovator in cloud-based open platform IoT intelligent transportation, and have recently expanded into smart parking technologies. At the heart of this innovation is our open cloud-based software platform, where we can combine data from literally any kind of traffic or parking system, any kind of sensor-based device, including pedestrian, public transit, to create a frictionless travel environment. So in addition to being able to collect all of that data, we can push that data to signage like we do for our variable message signs. We can push it to apps. We can push it to websites. So as Greg started with this whole connected, integrated, on-demand mobility environment, we see that as a key enabler of that environment moving forward. At the heart of our, today we have more than 5,000 customers in 50 states and 20 countries. We do work with the departments of transportation, as I'll get into a little bit later on in the slides, as well as small municipalities, the largest cities, including corporate clients. So for example, the cities of Boston, Baltimore, Louisville, and Chicago are among our customers, as our corporate clients such as DuPont, Johnson & Johnson, Los Angeles World Airports, Verizon, and Marathon Oil. On any given month, we detect, report on, and analyze data for more than 10 million vehicles. So, excuse me, this is a cheesy picture for sure, but I'd like to start with a quick story. I have 3 boys, so we're kind of living this whole thing as their ages are 20, 15, and 12. My oldest, who's now a junior in college, he's always had a passion for cars, absolutely loves them. Started with Hot Wheels and Matchboxes. Literally, we had miles of track, and he would spend hours upon hours racing his favorites against each other. And when he was exactly 15 years and 6 months old, which is the age to get your learner's permit in Virginia, which is where we live, we marched to the Department of Motor Vehicles to get his learner's permit. He couldn't wait to drive, and we probably booked 20 times the minimum hours required. And then when he was exactly 16 years and 3 months old, he was at the same DMV getting his official driver's license. Since then, he's bought his own car, a Subaru WRX, and he's made it a hobby. He has part-time jobs, he buys engine parts, other performance upgrades. It's way faster than it should be. and it's always impeccably clean and superbly maintained. So my 15-year-old, that's the guy on the left, he had his time with those same Hot Wheels cars. When it came time to head to the DMV to get his permit, which was recently, he was less than enthused. His exact words were, "Why drive when I can Uber?" And he's not alone. We just recently looked at a study by Arity that revealed that 59% of millennials said that they would rather spend time doing more productive tasks than driving, whereas just 45% of baby boomers agreed with that. But as you can see, the trend is changing. So my 12-year-old, the guy on the right, he loves those same Hot Wheels cars, but he's growing up in the now generation. So in addition to the Ubers and Lyfts, he's grown up with Airbnb and VRBO and same-day Amazon delivery. I don't think he'll ever own a car, to be honest. But maybe his older brother will let him rent his car for a day or an hour, but probably not. So we're probably better off working with Jeff and Zipcar to get a car from those guys. So the future definitely points more and more towards a shared multimodal experience, but the fact is we're already experiencing it and have the tools to take advantage of it today. So starting with this whole shared economy and shared environment, I figured start with Brian Chesky, one of the founders of Airbnb. There are tons of others like it as they struggled to get the company launched, which I think they tried to launch it 4 or 5 or 10 times until it finally started to get traction. But there you see, no way people don't want to sleep in other people's beds. Definitely come a long way since then, but the idea of offering up your house or room was just so radical at the time. Now it's common. In fact, just last month, it was announced that American consumers spent more last year on Airbnb than they did on Hilton and its subsidiary brands. And during the same period, we've seen the sharing economy evolve to pretty much every facet of the traveler, commuter, resident experience. Shared bikes and scooters like Zagster and Lime, Uberpool, Zipcar, and Prime Now are just a few examples. The issue is that while each are convenient in of themselves, they're all generally siloed systems. And as more and more sharing and mobility options come into play in urban centers, more vehicles tend to follow in terms of placement, active traffic. So all these end up putting pressure on traffic volumes and congestion, pedestrian foot traffic, safety, risks of accidents, etc. With autonomous cars looming on the horizon, we're not going to see any relief on those pressures anytime soon. So traffic, parking, and other mobility options are all part of the city's overall what we call transportation grid. So how can we manage the overall urban traveler experience in this environment? And what does that ideal experience look like? When we do, as Greg started off with this whole connected, integrated, on-demand environment, what does that look like? For the purpose of this, let's imagine a commuter named Bob. Bob lives in an urban city and is headed out on a business trip and needs to make some choices before he leaves the house for the airport. Like me, Bob is not one of those guys who wants to sit at the airport for 2 or 3 hours before his flight. He wants to get there just in time. First, he's going to look at traffic conditions and travel options via his mobile parking and payments in the reservations app. Might be from Arrive, things like that, and determines the route he would take. Parking options, or if he chooses not to drive due to traffic conditions, taking into account multimodal transportation, other types of transportation like trains, Uber, Lyft, etc. So Bob decides to drive using a car share service. So now he's going to be on the traffic safety management optimization grid, which is going to be constantly operating underneath his trip, assessing traffic conditions, backups, accidents, intelligent traffic light status, weather, and guiding him to where he's going via an intuitive connection, whether it's on his app, on the web, or an in-car user interface. As Bob is approaching the airport, things have changed. He receives an update that the wait time at TSA is getting longer. Making matters worse, the garage where he was originally supposed to park is undergoing emergency gate repairs and is closed, but fortunately parking is available at the adjacent terminal. Available parking locations now come into play. The status is updated and his route and destination are automatically adjusted, and it's all paid for in real time. Because Bob already has Apple Pay, Google Pay, PayPal, his credit card or debit card already connected to his account. So Bob takes his flight, takes off, and lands on schedule. That part, I guess we can control a little bit, but now at his destination city, he looks at his mobility as a service app for travel options to his client meeting. And you can see that the bus is 2 minutes away, or he can grab a bike or Lyft from the Lyft mobile hub. It serves as a station for both Lyft pickups and drop-offs. and the Lyft bike share service across the street. It's a beautiful day like it is here right now in Northern Virginia. So Bob decides to go for a bike ride to his meeting at the client's shared workspace, where he arrives on time and stress-free, ready to enjoy coffee and talk business. So the key about all of this is the connectivity and the accuracy of all of that data, all in an integrated platform. So a quick example of something like this that's in place today is an intelligent transportation system. Being a traffic guy, at some point, I probably had to bring in some traffic and transportation stuff. So you probably already know that there are literally thousands of sensors along our highways and our cities today. They measure everything from transit time to counting and classifying cars and trucks. When you combine all of these sensors into a common infrastructure, you create what's called an active transportation management system. ATMS components are defined as techniques that dynamically manage recurring and non-recurring congestion based upon prevailing traffic conditions. The whole goal is to optimize the capacity of the corridor and improve safety. So again, I live in Northern Virginia where traffic is perfect all the time. Actually, not even close. So I think we're ranked 19th out of the top 20 worst traffic environments in the country. Especially where we live, which is the Capital Beltway, I-495 and I-66. I mean, we drive around middle of the day, go to client meetings, and it doesn't matter. Time of day, day of week, season, phase of the moon, it's always backed up. I haven't figured it out. But there are people way smarter than I am trying to, and I-66 happens to be one of these systems. It's called an intelligent corridor. So while blurry, I apologize for that, but I insisted on having this picture in the deck. The picture is real. This is on I-66, just outside the Capital Beltway. In this specific case, they have variable message signs letting you know what's going on based upon the sensor data ahead. And then in real time, they can adjust the speed limit up or down. You'll notice that on the far left there, they still have that lane designated as HOV only. But they can also change that dynamically. You also see in the picture that they detected their stopped traffic ahead and have reduced the speed limit from 55 to 45. The whole goal of that is to slow traffic down so that you can avoid creating an even bigger traffic backup. And there's a pretty cool Mythbusters episode on this one if you want to see the benefits of moving even slowly versus stopping altogether. I'm sure many of you on the webinar have seen that one. But if this was an interactive session, and I've done this in face-to-face sessions, I would ask what's wrong with the situation, and of course I'd get the right answer. No one gives a crap what that sign 15 feet above the road says. They're going to go as fast as they can, and bam, they're going to hit the back of the queue, and that queue is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And then the Virginia Department of Transportation will use their sensor data to lower the speed limit to 25, and drivers will ignore it. But what if the driver wasn't in control, and instead we sent a message to the car to limit the speed to 25 miles an hour? It can be done, and it will be done via DSRC and 5G, perhaps coming soon to your city, courtesy of our friends at Verizon. So again, while this is an example of an interstate, same technology can be and is being applied within cities today to detect traffic speeds and congestion, dynamically change traffic signals, count vehicles and pedestrians at intersection, measure parking occupancy and availability on the street or in a lot or in a garage, and provide the right signage or apps to get you there quickly. So in addition to our connected traffic data, what if you had the other data traffic sources connected as well? So for mobility options, what are my best options to make it there on time? Singular vehicle, multimodal? Do I want to do ride share, car share? Do I want to take an Uber to the train station and the train station to my meeting? With the Bob example that I gave before. Bike share options, same thing. Parking. Is there really availability in that garage I just booked? Or are they oversold, and when I get there, I'm going to hear, I'm really sorry, but we're oversold. Or if I'm riding around trying to find a place to park and I see there's availability on 8th floor, is there really availability there? Or will I drive all the way up there just to find that the counts are wrong? Curbside management, huge issue today. From the general public perspective, how do I avoid specific rideshare taxi zones if I'm driving? How do I find them if I'm a pedestrian? If I'm a rideshare taxi driver, where do I go to pick up, drop off my rideshare taxi passenger? And how long can I remain in that zone? And from the city perspective, how do I trigger efficient and immediate enforcement of the curbside zone so I can prevent that whole traffic backup and traffic congestion? We're already sitting on a ton of data and we can leverage that, but there's a lot more coming. Many departments of transportation are already partnering with industries. An example, the Ohio DOT is investing $2 billion in autonomous vehicle infrastructure. It can include smart mobility corridors along I-270 around Columbus and on I-90 from Cleveland to the Pennsylvania border. But when we talk about autonomous and connected vehicles, we're talking about a lot of data, really, really big data. A single autonomous vehicle can produce enough data to wipe out your iPhone 10 storage in about 30 seconds. It's about 512 gigabytes per minute. Plus, you have to keep all the data for potential liability issues. Annualized, a single autonomous vehicle can produce upwards of 5 petabytes of data per year. So we think about pulling all these things together. What's the road look like for a better experience? Where I'm going to pull in the traffic data, I'm going to pull in the parking data. I have my mass transit options. I have the ability to pull all that data into a common app. I know what I'm going to do from the curbside perspective. So how do I get the travelers to make real-time decisions based upon the right now information? We pull all these disconnected systems in what we call a travel flow interstate. So it's all cloud-based, no servers, updates, all field service is all done quickly and remotely. It's consolidated and you can connect your data points across your parking and transportation grid. For example, license plate recognition, permitting, working in concert with your enforcement, or access control policies with ability in real time. What this data does for you. For example, I want to monitor and manage pay to park spots so I can see if they're priced right, or combine all my pay spots into a single dashboard view. All traffic makes this vision a reality through what we call travel flow as a service. We collect and integrate data from literally any kind of internal, external source, apply machine learning principles to that data, and we can track multimodal travel and trends in a more holistic way. This allows travelers to access guidance from the road, mass transit, and even pedestrian congestion in a way that's most convenient for them at any time. And we provide a single dashboard for better municipality, commercial, and parking operator travel planning and management. This allows us to deliver real-time travel guidance, push to any signage or personal device, and support greater cost efficiency, utilization, and revenue for municipalities and operators. So what are some of the benefits of this orchestrated, multimodal, and shared experience? Here you see some of the areas and some of the staggering statistics. But we probably didn't even need to present this to you because many of you are probably living them day to day. So certainly reduced impact on the infrastructure. You don't need to pave paradise and put up that parking lot, quoting Joni Mitchell. Carbon emissions decrease. You're going to make the place a greener planet. There's a reduced impact on pedestrians. So a lot of pedestrian fatalities and using Vision Zero as an example. From a convenience perspective, why drive to the city? Per my middle son's response, like, why drive when I can Uber? I can get stuff done in the back of an Uber. I can also use car share, ride share for meetings or errands. If I do have to drive, what's the most efficient route? Where do I park? Do I actually know that there's availability at that parking facility? And then I want to pay very easily, right? I don't want to necessarily have to walk up to a kiosk. That whole Uber-like experience has created a completely different environment for parking. So my 12-year-old, I promise you, he's going to drive into the garage and drive out of the garage, and he's automatically going to get billed for the time that he was in the garage. He's not going to have to go up to a kiosk or use any tickets. Frictionless parking. Worker productivity. How do I, get my employees to their seats as fast as possible so that they can start their day sooner and with less stress? And also, workers are less likely to leave early if they know they have multiple efficient options no matter what time of day that they want to leave. It's really, again, moving towards that, giving the workers a frictionless workday. Visitors to my city. A new city can be very intimidating. How do I get to where I'm going with the least amount of stress? Providing simpler routes, the simplest routes for complex situations. And then mobility options. If I'm new to a city, I might not know what kind of mass transit they have. I might not know, take a bus or a train or a TNC. So being able to provide that very easily. And then from a commerce and tourism perspective, tourism lives or dies on safety. So easily find points of interest, dining, entertainment, and easy to use options for getting there. And commerce is as much about bringing businesses and employees to a major city as it is about business travel to that city. Mobility is a major selling point. Sustainability, I talked a little bit about this when we talk about the reduced carbon emissions, but we have to look to scale for the long term versus a short-term solution or a flash in the pan. For traffic flow management to be scalable, it has to both connect to new nodes as well as the existing nodes. So many of you have already invested, or many people, many municipalities have already invested a lot of money into existing infrastructure. You don't want to rip that out. You want to try to leverage it where you can. And so how does travel flow interface with policy, fuel tax, congestion pricing, dynamic pricing for parking tools and fees, things like that has to be taken into account as well. But the whole idea is to provide that better urban resident, worker, and visitor experiences. See what Greg started out with this connected and integrated on-demand shared mobility environment. So bringing it all back to a couple of key points. As I started the presentation with the story of my 3 boys, the oldest of whom is borderline millennial, the trend is definitely shifting, not only for things like car ownership, but every facet of the sharing economy. Another example, my kids also had electric scooters grow up, but I never ever thought that we'd be cruising around on the streets of downtown Baltimore on one. But there we were a couple weeks ago, thanks to Bird. Assuming we have a lot of municipalities on the webinar, my assumption is you're feeling the impact of Ubers and Lyfts and increased congestion, and you're dealing with issues of curbside management and overstaying your automated ALU zones. Perhaps you're considering new bike lane initiatives. Perhaps you've already implemented smart parking in 1 or 2 of your garages and maybe dealing with inaccurate counts and potentially losing the associated revenue with it. My suggestion is to start to look at all of this data versus keeping it siloed. Measure it all so that you can better manage it all. And who knows, maybe you can unpave paradise and tear down that parking lot. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Greg.
Can everybody hear me? I realized I may have been on mute there. You can hear. Thank you, Andy. That was a terrific presentation and lots of information to digest. And for everybody on the phone, if you have specific questions that you would like to ask Andy, at the bottom of the screen is a Q&A and a chat feature. Please type them in now. If we don't have time to get to them, we will make sure that we forward them to Andy after the call and give him the opportunity to respond. But Andy, we kind of touched a little bit upon the notion of scooters and e-bikes coming into the fold, as well as connected vehicles. And so, one of the questions that we just received is, how is your company thinking about this more complicated road ecosystem, and how are cities best prepared to deal with all of these different types of mobility that are coming into the fold, some of them at the same time, and when they're already dealing with major traffic flow issues, just from quote unquote non-connected cars?
So, we address that a couple ways. It's a great question. So starting with the non-connected cars, I mean, the majority of what we see today is obviously non-connected. We do detection. So what we call it is like whole vehicle to vehicle. There's vehicle to infrastructure. There's infrastructure to vehicle. So right now what we have is really vehicle to infrastructure. But in this case, I'm not getting a lot of intelligence from most of the vehicles, but we're able to detect traffic speed, traffic volume, your typical traffic engineering report. We're going to pull in the number of cars that go through this specific intersection based on time of day, day of week, put those into 5-mile-an-hour bins. So that's a very clear indication. But the whole idea of being able to take that location and then map it to or orchestrate it with other locations, now I start to get a better vision as to what's going on within this entire, what we call the grid. So as an example, many cities will have a ton of congestion at their ALU zones, which is load and unload zones. But what we find is that the traffic actually getting to those zones is backed up at the intersection. So you need to solve the problem before you get to the ALU zone so that you're not having the TNCs waiting at that ALU zone. Luckily we have a common kind of parent with all this. So when you look at Zagster, they're friends of ours, so we get to share a lot of data with them. So when it comes to the electric scooters, we're just starting now to tap into that. And I think that Jeff touches upon this as part of his presentation. But for example, knowing where those scooters are, and in Jeff's case, where the where the shared vehicles are is key. I mean, I need to know where those cars are, and I need to know where the people are. So guys like iInside, who are pulling a ton of data together based upon where the people are standing at the curbs, it's just an example how you need to orchestrate all these different components of data to provide the complete picture.
That's helpful, Andy. Second question that came in related to data privacy. Obviously, it's privacy and security are major issues that the IoT consortium kind of tackles on an ongoing basis in all 5 of our verticals. There's a lot that's coming into the fold with respect to our elections coming up and just changing aptitudes around kind of privacy and anonymization of data, whether it's between vehicle and municipality, whether it's between consumer and some of the big tech providers. And so, you know, the question that came through here, wanted to get your perspective, Andy, on you know, where are sort of the boundaries that you're looking at in terms of that data sharing, and how is that information being articulated to the consumers of these municipalities, or even if, between the municipalities, as to what data is being gathered and how that's being digested and shared?
It's a great question. And again, in my background, I was formerly Chief Technology Officer of an identity theft company. So when it comes to data privacy and data protection, a lot of background in that. And I'll say that right now, when we look at capturing data, we look at either detection or identification. So in some cases, if I'm collecting the data via a radar display, I don't know anything about the vehicle. I just know that this vehicle and possibly this size went past this radar or LiDAR display. And then when we look at identification, that's where things like LPR or Bluetooth come in, because now I have a physical license plate. So right now, I would say we can certainly hash and anonymize, you know, just basically collect the last 6 digits of the Bluetooth MAC address. I can hash the license plate. But I'll tell you that when we look at where Europe is today and where they have, because we face this with some of our corporate clients as well, if we want to put in a video analytics solution, the fear is that you'll be able to, you know, capture faces with that. And I'll be able to tell who was where and when. We have some hospital customers where they're very concerned about HIPAA. But, and there are ways to deal with that where you basically can count and have the data on the edge or on the sensor on the device. But I think that as we move forward, it's going to become more and more open, where the anonymization of data is going to be less, I would say, it's going to be less critical for the convenience and the value that it provides. In other words, again, what we're seeing in Europe, there's a facial recognition camera on every corner, and they're capturing all that data for privacy issues, for safety and security issues. And I think that's really where the boundary is going to be. If it's a safety or security issue, then anonymization of data is going to be less important. If it's primarily around counting, congestion, or convenience, then I'm going to basically opt in. So sorry for the long answer on that one, but hopefully I covered some of the different options.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. Appreciate you tackling that one, Andy. And again, if you have any additional questions for Andy, please send them in. We'll make sure that he gets them after this webinar. We're going to turn to Jeff at Avis Budget Group to share his presentation. So Jeff, if you're on the line, if you can jump in now.
Great, thank you, Greg. I'd like to take a minute just to thank Greg and the IoT Consortium for this opportunity. It's a really exciting time for Avis Budget Group. And so I'll talk a little bit about who we are, where we're going, and what you can expect to see from us in the future. But I think most importantly, whether it's from our Avis's We Try Harder brand promise to the constant innovation of the category, Avis Budget Group and our brands have always looked to technology as a way to not only meet our customers' needs, but to unlock new possibilities. And those new possibilities really focus around convenience for our customers, efficiency within our existing business models, and most importantly, about driving overall a great experience. So today, I'm going to take a few minutes to share with you and give you a look about how we're going to fuse our track record of innovation with what we think is a huge opportunity in front of us, and that's the fast evolving world of mobility. Now, we've been anticipating and driving the change in mobility for some time, whether it was our acquisition of Zipcar in 2013, which a lot of people still aren't familiar with, that we actually own one of the largest car sharing, or the largest car sharing organization in the world. To our changes we made in our groundbreaking Avis mobile app, the launch of our mobility lab in Kansas City, the addition of over 100,000 connected cars to our fleet, and we'll talk about the role that they play in our future. But probably even more interesting to most people are a number of new partnerships where you know, a 70-year-old company is now partnering with companies like Waymo and Lyft and Fetch and Arrive, and of course mainstays in the automotive industry like Toyota and Ford and Continental. The point here is that Avis Budget Group has been unafraid to take risks to move our core business as well as the industry forward. I think before we get started, just a little bit about who we are. You know, a quick look by the numbers. When we think about solutions, for us, it's really we are a global company that is operating in the traditional rental and car sharing industries. But I always show this slide because it's important to understand scale. For us, technology and innovation and new solutions can't just be cool. They have to be able to scale. If you look at over 600,000 vehicles globally, at over 11,000 rental locations in 180 countries, we have the operational muscle that it takes to scale solutions in and around the mobility space. So you've heard a lot about this today, and we're really proud that people agree with what our bold vision is, and that's really a world where mobility is, you know, completely connected and integrated and on demand. Today, the road is shifting beneath our feet. I mean, consumers are looking to on-demand services to get from point A to point B, sometimes using a bike, a scooter, a van, a car. Sometimes they're driving it, sometimes it's driven by others, and someday that car will even drive itself. Our vision of that, of the future about being completely connected and integrated and on demand is about being able to deliver mobility services to both consumers and to businesses. And as a mobility company, we're completely engaged in this shift. And we're taking numerous steps as we evolve our business to meet both present and future needs of our customers and our partners. At the core of this, I think it's important to understand we've put two key drivers at the center of this evolution. One is our mobile app as we enable customers to control their end-to-end experience. And the second is connected cars, and we'll talk about how that is fueling our growth and our change as an organization. But I think simply put, when I think about this statement about completely connected and integrated and on demand, it's about being able to leverage our existing products and services and to move those to where consumers are, and to grant them access to the products and services that they want access to, when and where and how they want to. It's a real paradigm shift from where we are today. If you think about our traditional business models, consumers come to us, whether that's at a rental facility or an airport consolidated car rental facility. And this is really about extending our mobility capabilities to the end consumer. If you look at this image, you might say, you know, what does this look like? And it really looks kind of like a transit map. We spent a lot of time really kind of anchoring our corporate website to this image. And that's really by design. It's not that we're turning into a transit company, but more importantly, we believe the lines between public transit and private transportation are starting to blur. And you can see that whether it's from car sharing to ride hailing to scooters and e-bikes and micro transit, integration into public transportation, I think it's really safe to say that the private sector is shouldering the load of moving hundreds of millions of people each day. And for the most part, a mobile app is at its core. As a car rental company, we really knew we needed to meet our customers when and where they wanted to, which has forced us to provide them with the ability to have on-demand access to cars. We needed our user experience to closely mimic and match the experience that they're getting in mobility in their daily lives. And we also had to think about how we play a larger role in their daily lives as it relates to mobility. We have a lot of experience in this area of mobility. If you look at just what we've done with Zipcar alone, who've been in the car sharing space for nearly 20 years with over 1 million members. And what we've been able to do is leverage the power of that brand and their understanding of mobility to integrate it into our other core products. When you think about at the center of this journey for us, we have placed a large bet on connected cars. And there's a lot of definitions of what a connected vehicle is. There's a lot of different ways to describe the way in which they communicate. And what I thought I would do is share with you my simple definition of a connected car. For us, it's a vehicle that communicates to us and can tell us things about the vehicle, where it is, how it feels, how the equipment's performing. It can tell us the odometer, it can tell us the fuel reading, and we can also ask it to do things. We can ask it to lock or unlock the door. We can enable things like start authorization. And what we're doing is really using the connected car technology at the core to do 3 major things across our business. 1, reinvent the existing rental experience. 2, digitize our business. And 3, about developing new models. If you think about reinventing rental, it's about taking the existing car rental business making it a more seamless, frictionless process that allows us to eliminate pain points for the customer. If you think about digitizing the business, for us, it's about using connected car technology and our fleet management capabilities to enhance the efficiency of our operations. And we'll share some examples, which I really think are good if we have fleet managers on the call, companies that manage large fleets, of some of the benefits that we've seen. And last and certainly not least is those new mobility models, which is about enabling our products and services for customers when and where they need access to. You'll see a lot of features across connected cars. This is a very rapidly evolving landscape. For us today, we focus on really a core set of competencies related to a connected car. Of course, we're interested in the odometer, the fuel reading, the location of the vehicle, the ability to read diagnostic trouble codes. So if you think about how a vehicle is feeling, providing us with the health of the vehicle, as well as tire pressure management systems. It's really impressive the number of benefits that it offers to our operations, to our customers and our partners, and we believe it is really a strong differentiator for us. But at the end of it, what it's really about is customer-centric connectivity. And what's interesting here is if you think about the intersection between what we're doing with connected fleets and connected customers and smart or connected cities, it really has a customer at the center of that journey. And there's a lot of features and benefits that we're able to offer and equip for either fleets or cities or customers. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. When you think about the connected fleet, if there's anyone here today that manages a line of fleets, you'll see that there's a number of benefits that a connected car can offer, from operational planning to vehicle recovery to fuel tracking. I'm going to share just a couple quick examples that are near and dear to us that may be applicable, but they could also apply to municipalities and telcos and anybody who's responsible for a connected fleet. I think most importantly, at the core is connected car data. And that connected car data really does a couple things for us. It's about allowing us to make better decisions using real-time data. And those better decisions help to really do 2 things. One is to enhance the service that we provide to our customers, which is first and foremost to us. And the second is how we operate our business today. A couple just simple things in the way that we run our business. If you think about our business, 600,000 vehicles means about 2.4 million tires that have to be checked to be ensured that they're properly inflated for consumers. And today, people go out and check tire pressures on our vehicles to ensure their safety. In the future, we wake up with a connected car and we know which 2,347 vehicles have tire pressure issues, the type of issue that's associated with it, and where on the vehicle it's located. So that allows us to help prevent unnecessary disruptions to our travelers, and it also helps us to more effectively manage our business process. Another example of that is the ability to do real-time inventory. And so as you can imagine, with 600,000 assets, we're very focused on making sure that we manage and account for those assets. And today we have people that go out multiple times a day and count and manage that fleet. In a connected world, we'll know the location of the vehicle and we'll be able to create virtual inventories without having to go out and physically touch each vehicle. I think one of the simplest business cases that we saw, one of the simple use cases, and in a concept that I think really applies across a whole different set of different types of needs, is we've been able to use this information when a customer is in violation of their rental agreement, or if a vehicle is stolen, the ability to quickly recover the vehicle. And we've been able to use this technology integrated with solid business process to improve our recovery times, to recover the vehicles with less damage. And by recovering them with less damage and not having to report the unit stolen, we've been able to maintain the residual values of the vehicle by not having to unnecessarily report them stolen. Some of you may not be aware, but Avis Budget Group sells about 180,000 vehicles annually. So you can imagine the type of impact it has on our fleet. And if you're on working within a municipality or someone else doing fleet management, you can see the value that it would bring to your organization as well. And what's even interesting is that as we've used, today we have over 100,000 connected cars. We've committed to be fully connected by 2020, but today we have a mix of connected and non-connected vehicles. What's interesting is because of the time that we've freed up and with utilizing the connected car technology, we've also been able to realize benefits on the non-connected car side as well, because it's freed up time for us. Another good use case for us is really about fuel tracking and recovery. Fuel has been a pain point in the rental industry for some time. Our approach has been one of transparency. If you think about your fuel process today, it's an approximation. Someone gets in the vehicle, they take a look at the fuel gauge, they approximate the fuel gauge to 1/8 of a tank, and then they record that as part of the rental record. In a connected car, we use a different approximation method that approximates fuel to 1/10 of a gallon. What it allows us to do is a systematic approach for fair and transparent processing of fuel. And we use that to process the rental transactions. And then in cases where customers have actually returned a vehicle with more fuel than it went out with, we've been able to actually issue them a credit for the fuel. So moving on quickly to the benefits for Smart City, I talked a little bit about our Kansas City Mobility Lab. It's a really special place for us where we're able to leverage our connected car technology, integrated in with our operational facilities, and the city of Kansas City to really test, pilot, improve next generation technology, experiences, and business processes. Today, we've partnered with Casey Moe, and we've had the opportunity to pilot and test with them a couple of programs that help us focus on enhancing the customer journey. And so, you know, what we hear from travelers is they arrive into a new city that they're unfamiliar with. They're trying to make the most of their time. And as you can imagine, if you're from a municipality, you already know this, that cities are trying to make the most of the traveler's time when they're in and around their cities. And so we've partnered with Kansas City and integrated notifications into our mobile app that actually highlight Kansas City experiences and locations that may be really important to travelers or help to improve their overall experience. We also think long-term that we'll be able to help them with the mobility routes, improving the overall satisfaction of travelers to the city, being able to leverage. There's a tremendous amount of content that's available from local communities and that's really important to travelers who are trying to make the most or live like a local when they're in those markets, and making that available to travelers. There's also, as we think about it, we've been working on a number of partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, which is really a benefit to the smart cities, is our innovative partnerships, and they take advantage not only of our digital platform but also physical platforms. And so, if you think about companies like Waymo, we leverage our brick and mortar locations to service the vehicles, fuel the vehicles, and maintain self-driving cars, and has given us the opportunity to be on the ground floor of that opportunity. For companies like Lyft and Via, we leverage our fleet procurement and management expertise to enable them to increase supply of vehicles for drivers in high demand markets. For transportation companies like Brightline, we leverage our fleet and on-demand zip cars and Avis vehicles. We provide first and last mile connectivity for transit-oriented developments and multimodal initiatives. So we're able to use our existing products and services to extend value back to the smart cities through these innovative partnerships. We've also partnered, I know Andy talked a lot about parking. We've also partnered with parking with a partner, Arrive, formerly known as ParkWiz, about being able to enable our travelers with real-time access to available parking and the ability to go ahead and process that transaction while in the mobile app. Also, as we go forward, there's a lot of great learning that comes from the connected cars integrated with the customer journey, understanding the use cases for vehicle locations, optimizing the position of mobility solutions, understanding how to reallocate and reposition those vehicles based upon demand. And we're doing a really interesting, we have an interesting operation running in London where we're running over 300 EVs in our Zipcar fleet that allow for free floating in and around London. And so as we think about mobility, smart mobility within the city and municipalities, we're working with them to understand the type of solutions they'd like to make available to their constituents. We talked a lot about the journey. I think as we go forward, continuing to understand how to enhance a customer's journey while they're in the city and giving them offers and access to products and services that makes sense to them while they're on their journey, and being able to leverage that. For us, at the heart of the journey has really been about enhancing our customer experience. We started out on a journey in 2015 to reinvent the rental experience. And what that really meant for us was a customer-centric design, putting our customers at the center of the experience and listening to what they had to say about their existing experience and what they didn't like. And while that may seem very intuitive for a lot of you, this was something that we held as a key tenet moving forward. And we listened to customers about their pain points, about what we could do to improve their overall experience and make it more seamless and reduce friction. What that really meant for us was about a paradigm shift, which was shifting control from the car rental company, Avis Budget Group, to the consumer and letting them control their end-to-end experience on the mobile app. The ability to pick and choose the car they wanted in real time from the mobile app, the same as a rental agent could do. Controlling access to the vehicle, the ability to manage and monitor our shuttles and the timing between stops and when they could expect the next arrival. Eliminating the need to contact a contact center. Unfortunately, a lot of areas of the company travel, air travel, is easily disrupted, and sometimes it's just as quick to stay in your rental vehicle and go from where you are to your home destination. And we've enabled customers to control that all from the mobile device. And as we move forward, we'll leverage connected cars to automatically lift exit gates and get our customers in and out of the rental facility. For us, we talked about this earlier, it's about enabling our customers to access our products and services when and where they want to. And what that really means is any vehicle, anywhere, anytime. So we talk a little bit about the future. One of the big questions I always get is, hey, are autonomous vehicles, are they coming? When are they coming? And what does it mean to car rental? And what does it look like? What's really interesting about us is, I think what first thing we have to do is we have to recognize that we're not going from driving today to automatically with a car with no steering wheel and brakes tomorrow. I think it's going to go in stages. It's going to evolve across the levels. If you've seen any of this, you're probably familiar with the 5 levels of autonomy. I think the most exciting part for our business is, given the way that we cycle our fleet on almost an annual basis, we have access to the latest and greatest technology in the vehicles. And we tend to be one of the early adopters of technology in and around this space. So today, you use your mobile app to reserve a car. The car has backup cameras and side mirror detection warnings. Some even have automatic braking. But farther in the future, you can imagine that there'll be dedicated lanes at airports where a car could be put into self-driving mode, dropping you off or picking you up at the curb, eliminating the need for you to go to the rental car facility, but then returning back to us at the end of the journey. Even further down the road, I'm sure you can imagine when you rent a car from Avis, you'll no longer pay fees based on the type of car or the number of days. It'll be more about the experience in the vehicle. What type of experience do we want to have while you're in the vehicle? Do you need a workstation? Do you need a printer? Is it going to be an entertainment experience? And I don't think those are far-fetched scenarios, but I think those will start to evolve certainly at a later time for us. The point for us, though, is that we do see a world where mobility is connected, it's autonomous, and it's on demand, and we're working to evolve our technology, our people, and our processes to meet those changing demands for our customers. Greg, once again, on that note, I just want to say thank you for allowing us to participate today in the webinar, and I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you very much. What a terrific presentation, and we really appreciate Avis Budget's customer-centric approach. We talk about that a lot at the IoTC. A few questions came in, and again, at the bottom of the screen, if you have questions, please put them in, and we'll make sure to ask Jeff if we can't get to them all now. But you mentioned a couple of things. One was the KC pilot. Bob Bennett, who just stepped down from the CIO position at KC, but was there for several years, and I know you worked closely with him. One of the question that came in, Jeff, was with respect to, as we talk about smart cities, often the conversation is around current citizens within a city. And you kind of introduced an important element that doesn't get discussed enough, which is around visitors and kind of the traveler's time. So the question is, what can other cities learn that you've uncovered, in your early kind of pilot work with Kansas City about visitors to a city and kind of their interests and how the connected mobility ecosystem can work in their favor as they're going on their holidays or work trips or other engagements?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've learned is that there's a tremendous amount of hyperlocal content that can help to enhance a traveler's journey. And what we're seeing, I think, as everybody is squeezed for time, personally, people are looking to find ways to make their business travel more enjoyable. And so I know one of the things that I've come to appreciate about my journeys back and forth to Kansas City is a new appreciation for barbecue and the different types of barbecue. And so you may land at KC Airport with the Avis mobile app, and it might tell you where to find one of the top barbecue places in Kansas City, or it may take you to one of the baseball museums. And so I think it's an interesting opportunity where cities are able to showcase their gems to travelers. We service globally over 34 million rental transactions a year, and that's a lot of travelers going to places where they're looking to take advantage of the local culture. Terrific.
Switching gears, our next question here is from Cam Hosen. Is Avis Budget interested in the trucking industry? Cam has mentioned that he's invested in a software company that works in logistics and transportation, and there are many frictions in that market, including truck drivers. And more drivers from underprivileged areas to come to the industry to remove some of those logistic and capacity limitations. Would also serve to reduce congestions within major metropolitan areas. Is that an area that Avis Budget is looking into?
Yeah, Cam, it's an interesting opportunity. We actually own a budget truck rental, which has a fleet of about 20,000 vehicles in North America, and we have an ever-increasing commercial fleet abroad. So the trucking space is certainly very interesting to us. And me personally, I spent 19 years of my career in and around supporting the trucking. So I think it's an interesting opportunity. I think connected cars and connected trucks have similar benefits when you think about the fleet management attributes. And given that a lot of them have hired drivers in it, I think there's a lot there long-term with regards to overall benefit.
Terrific. One final question. We're getting close to the top of the hour here. You mentioned the fuel gauge, Jeff, in your presentation, and that you were able to, monetize a little bit sort of the excess fuel that the indicators don't necessarily have. The question that is asked here is actually the flip side. Is that you mentioned that you're actually issuing credit for fuel to customers that actually where the fuel gauge might be lower than the actual reading should have been. And that seems to be a real value to a consumer. We're often asked about that value exchange, and consumers need to buy into this ecosystem. And that seems like giving money back for fuel is a really interesting opportunity. Have you been sharing that, sort of with the world that you're doing that? Is that something that you're doing on a wide scale basis, or is that still in pilot mode, the issuing credit back for fuel that may not have been used during your trips?
No, we're actually doing that at all of our most of our rental facilities today. We see that as a transparent process, one that if a customer comes back and returned it with more than they went out with, compensating the customer at market rate for the fuel that they've returned with the vehicle. We're the only ones doing that I'm aware of, but we definitely have received some positive feedback from our customers around that.
Terrific. Again, I want to thank Jeff and Andy. This is just the start of our conversation at IoTC around mobility. We will continue to have these sessions both virtually as well as in person. Just a couple quick notes. Again, our next members meeting is May 13th in Santa Clara. We'll be chairing the IoT World Conference and their Smart Cities activities. Next week, our final episode is going to feature Verizon, and Lonnie Ingram will be presenting. Same time next Wednesday at noon. All of the sessions will be housed on our website. So if you have colleagues or friends that didn't get a chance to catch this session live, please have them check out our website. And we'd like to thank everybody for participating today, in particular, Jeff and Andy and your teams for putting together today's presentations. They were terrific. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the spring day.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.